All right, everybody. So it's been a day. It's been a day. Usually these come on at 8 o'clock, and well, it's 9 o'clock. Um, so what had happened today is last Friday I contacted who was supposed to come on this week, which was Previgenics, and I asked them, if they were ready to go for today, and they said that they couldn't do it at 8 o'clock. They could do it during the day. I said, great, works still, get one done and we're good to go for the day. So I planned for that. Messaged, let me see, messaged message today at 10 o'clock and asked him if he was ready to do it sometime today, and they were not. So anyhow, they got really busy, and so that's why we didn't get to do today's at 8 o'clock with Previgenics, was because of that. But we have gotten Barr Run Forge to come on, so that'll be nice to have him come on. So we're just waiting on him, and as soon as he's able to, he's going to come on, and we're going to put him on. He was. I was very, very happy to get him on here because I thought, man, I don't have anybody. I literally tried all day to get somebody on and could not find anybody. But we got him, so that'll be great because he's a great guy. I like what he's doing over there, so can't wait to get him on here in just a few minutes. So a couple things. If you watch tonight's episode, next week we have Aeromixer. We have Elijah from Aeromixer coming on. And if you don't know what Aeromixer is, it mixes fertilizer and compost tea, bruised compost tea. And it's $279 for the Aeromixer. And he's going to give one away next week. So if you watch tonight's video and you watch next week's video, at the end of the live stream next week with Aeromixer, we're going to ask a few questions. And a couple of them is going to come from this live stream. A couple of them is going to come from that live stream. And whoever answers those questions correctly, all right, you're going to win the Aeromixer from Aeromixer. So watch this and make sure you pay attention to everything that's said in this, and be ready for those questions next week at the end of the show, and you could be the lucky winner of an Aeromixer. I'm telling you guys, that thing is awesome. I mean, just super, super cool. So I really, really like it. Let me see, check everything here, make sure I ain't got no messages. Yeah, we're good. So anyhow, how many of you guys are planting? How many of y'all are getting ready for season? Anybody got plants started and ready and doing all that? So I know I've been super busy trying to get all that done, trying to fight with tillers, trying to get soil test done, get the amendments for the soil test here. It's been one thing after another. So hopefully, we'll start seeing that progression, right, and getting ready to do it. Getting everything prepped. All right, where to begin, Homestead? That sounds good. So we've got Barr Run Forge here. So let me something. I don't know what this stuff is here. I'm gonna click this stuff off of here because I don't know what it is, and then we're gonna pull him up. So here is Troy from Barr Run Forge. So hey, Troy.
So, howdy.
First of all, thank you so much for coming in and picking this up on such a short notice. I mean, you didn't even have 2 hours notice, and I really appreciate it. I looked and looked all day, high and low, and I was
at the bottom of the barrel and ended up at Barr Run Forge.
I wasn't at the bottom of the barrel. I wasn't at the bottom of the barrel. At the bottom of the barrel, it gets pretty bad, right? We're still up here in the top half of the barrel.
Right.
So, yeah, we're doing good.
I'm at least a floater at that point, right?
Yeah. I mean, you're up there pretty high. So, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, man, I don't know. I'm going through Instagram, and I'm like, man, I just I just don't know. And I was like, I've never actually talked to you. And I was like, I don't know if I should write him or not. But you know what? I'm going to write him because he seemed like a pretty good guy, So I wrote you, and you were more than willing to help me out, man. I'm really, really grateful for that. So thank you so much.
Not a problem. I was just sitting at getting ready for Bible study, getting ready prepare our Bible study for the evening, and saw the message come up, and I was like, if it works out, man, I can. If not,
Right.
I'll do the best I can.
Well, you're certainly doing me a solid, and I really appreciate it. It's like I told you, I didn't want any pressure because to me, Bible study is more important than anything I'm doing. Right. So that's that's the base of everything that we do here. Is Christ first. Because without him, there is none of this. This is
pointless.
Right. Exactly. So I always try to make sure that people know, especially like if I go to a way off or something, or somebody's like, oh man, you grow all them giants and stuff. And I always try to make sure that they know, like, I didn't do anything. It was nothing that I'd done. Yeah. I went out there and I might've planted a seed and I might've put that seed into the dirt after it sprouted, but I didn't sprout it. I'm not the one that grew it afterward. I just tended to it, right? Much like the shepherd of the church, right? The pastor, God brings the increase, God brings the people in, and he just tends to them, So it's the same way here when we're growing stuff, and it's good to have another believer on here because I don't get very many of those either. So
I understand.
It's nice to have you on here.
Yeah. Yeah, I tend to. I at one point in time at our church where I'm the minister at, I used to have a little article we do in our online newsletter or whatever, and I always signed everything. And I tell people I'm just the equipment manager.
That's right. Right.
I'm there just to, as the scripture tells us, the equipping of the saints. That's all I do.
That's right. Absolutely. And that is a very important job, to be, the pastor of the church and stuff, and even assistant pastors or preachers that's up underneath of the pastor, assistant pastor. It's a very important job that we have to, help the fellow believers within the congregation and push them forward and stuff. So, I mean, I couldn't agree more with you though. You're just equipping them and you're getting them ready for battle, because every day is a battle. You're going to face something.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So, and without putting on the whole armor of God, we don't stand a chance,
Not at all, man. Not at all.
But, let's kind of talk a little bit about what you do. Because I think forging is a very interesting topic. I have a fellow veteran here, just a few miles down the road from me, that started up Davidson's. I think it's called Davidson's Blacksmithing Forge or something of that nature. And he has veteran classes that he does twice a month, and a really, really good guy. And he's been wanting me to come down there all winter long. And I have just been so enamored with everything else and been pulled to one direction or the other. And I haven't made it down there yet. He wanted me to come down there and make some tools with him, and he said, what kind of tools would you like to make? And I said, well, I like a couple different hoes that I could use, within the garden and stuff, and some other things. And, I just hadn't been able. So I'm hoping before it gets really, really busy here, as if it ain't already busy enough, that I can get down there and maybe make a few tools with him and stuff. But like I said, I've always been fascinated with forging, the process of it. It started several years ago, and then it just kind of amplified whenever the shows all started coming out. The History Channel shows, Forged in Fire. There was another one that they had on there that it was only one season long. I can't remember his name, but it followed a pretty famous one from Kentucky, famous blacksmith, and he sells his knives for, oh goodness, way up there. He even makes muskets, is another thing that he makes as well. And I just can't think of his name, but it was out in like 2016, 2017,
Okay.
something like that. The show was on history. But when I started watching those, it just kind of really anchored me and drew me
Sure.
in. And then I'll hear all these, veterans talk about, man, it's great. It's great. Get out there, swing a hammer, and
Yeah.
and kind of just get your mind off stuff. And I'm thinking, well, that sounds a lot like gardening and things, and that seems like
Sure.
something I could do in the wintertime. To kind of replace what gardening I can't do inside.
Right.
Maybe I could replace that with some forging and stuff. Because I'll be honest with you, I'm getting too old to really go out there and not that old, but just kind of too old to go out there and trap. You know what I mean? I'm getting to
Yeah.
where the cold doesn't like me and I don't like it. And if I could be beside a fire smashing away on some iron, I'd rather do
Yeah.
that than trapping, and collecting cold iron all day with animals to it, and then having to stand out there and take the skin off of them and then tan it
Right.
and all that.
Sure.
That gets old. I've done that long
Yeah.
enough. So I'm thinking, maybe forging could be it. So, how did you get into forging? And let's hear the story about you.
Well, I'll throw two caveats in with what you were talking about earlier. Uh, Number one, if you're going to go down there to your buddy, the veteran, uh,
Yeah.
there's a warning. It is addictive.
Okay.
it is
Okay.
it is addictive, man. It's once you see metal form out of another shape into another shape,
Right.
you have to be fascinated by it, and you just want more,
Well,
or you'll hate it.
right. I was whenever I got out of the Army, my uncle got me a job working at Phillips Machine Service, and I was there for about 6 months pushing a broom. And
Yeah,
then they said, "Hey, do you want to be a machinist?" Sure.
yeah,
So they sent me to machinist school. So I mean, I can do the like welding. Of course, welding isn't a
uh-huh.
big part of forging that, but I was fascinated enough with machining, so I can
Yeah,
only imagine what forging would do. You know what I mean? I'm sure that would
yeah.
be really
That's the part of the fascinating part about it is, when you look at even woodworking or even the machining side, the majority of the time you're taking material away.
right,
And in forging, you're taking that same amount of material, that same mass, and completely reforming it into something else, and you're not taking anything away from it,
right,
as a general rule. And
right,
that's
right.
that's fascinating to me. So that's the first thing. I'll warn you, it is addictive.
Okay.
Second thing is, careful with the old talk. You're too old to do stuff. I just turned 50 yesterday. Uh,
Well,
and,
you're not.
and
Yeah, I'm not that old yet, so
I just turned 50 yesterday, and one of the things I've had rheumatoid arthritis since I was 5. So when we went to go put our shop together, one of the things, and my son does that with me, as you know, um,
right,
and I told him straightforward. I said, I want to work year round, but if we're going to do that, we've got to have a little bit more climate controlled shop. So we have heat in there, and we try to keep it cool in there as much as possible. But we work year round in there, and well, thank you, Joel. I appreciate that. I can see the
right,
chats
right. Yeah.
up here.
Happy
Uh,
birthday.
yeah, I appreciate that. So that was one of the caveats is I've got buddies who literally started forging when they were 60 and up, and that's the other side of this is it really can go at your pace.
Right,
There are folks who can go hardcore at it all day long, or there's that guy who can just really just ease into it and relax and just do it whenever they feel like doing it. Put
right.
it in the fire, take it out of the fire, and that's such a great art and a craft to be able to get into something like that, uh, and of all ages. And I love the fact that
Right.
we've got a lot of young guns in the craft right now that are just doing amazing stuff,
They
amazing
are.
stuff.
They are. It really has blown up, over the
Yeah,
past few years,
yeah,
and I'll be honest with you, I'm all for it because I think that level of skill and knowledge, and the skill set alone is something
mhm,
that we should never lose.
no,
And as society progresses, and we've seen what losing the homestead has costed people, right? With food and everything else, and them not knowing how to grow anything or raise anything
Right,
outside of a dog or cat. Half of them can't raise those, right?
right, right.
Half of them would kill a goldfish. So I really believe that blacksmithing is that thing that we need to have. We need the
Oh
people who
yeah,
can make the tools, who can make the knives, who can make the hangers or whatever we need for the kitchen, right? The farriers, those who are going to go
yeah,
out and shoe our horses and stuff, right? We
sure.
need those people, and so that skill set is a great one to have, especially if we keep getting any worse than what we're getting here lately, right?
Absolutely,
Um,
absolutely. I've said
we,
two things about this. Is number one, consider, if you will. I first of all, I think things are cyclical, in that I think the
Absolutely.
individual craft, the individual art, the individual skill set is something that will be desirous later on. The longer we go, for so many people, like in the homesteading side of things, we're just one generation away from knowing. Remember, in our grandma canning, green
Yep.
beans and stuff like
Right.
that. And then if that disappears, then we have to go reclaim it somehow.
Right.
Um, and blacksmithing faded as a result of a lot of technology. And I'll say this the right way. I mean, I've got, oh, that sounds wrong. I do have degrees,
Right.
educational degrees, uh, but that precipitated people not taking on the crafts and those types of skills. Uh,
Absolutely.
so so we have to really be careful that we don't allow those things to fall away, because if you go back to the up until the turn of into the 1900s, the blacksmith was everything to a community. I
It
mean,
was.
everything.
Yep.
You didn't have anything to eat on or with. You didn't
Right.
open your doors. You didn't
Nope.
drive your wagon. You didn't drive. You didn't do anything without
Right.
something that the blacksmith. He was the mechanic. He was your. He made the hardware
Everything.
in your everything in there. And so
Your
I think it's
nails,
really
you know?
right. Every
Yeah.
every nail was from a blacksmith's hand.
Right.
So I think there is a certain level of people who are saying, those crafts, those skills are valued,
They are.
and I think we get back to them as well. And then a certain amount of people have valued it because it does bring us back to a more simplistic lifestyle, simplistic ideas.
Right.
So
Absolutely.
that was something that always was a draw to me. And to answer your question about how I got into blacksmithing, I we used to go to a place in on the Blue Ridge Parkway, called Mabry Mill. It was near Meadows of Dan, Virginia, right on the Virginia North Carolina border. Love the Blue Ridge Parkway. It's literally my dad's favorite place on the entire planet. And they had the grist mill that while they were building the parkway, they kind of almost ran over the top of this grist mill. And they saw it and said, "Oh, we have to restore it." There, hey, yay! It's Troy, Eric and Monica there. They
Yeah.
wished me a happy birthday on video, and that was very special to me. That was a really neat thing. Anyway,
They're great people.
oh my gosh, just love them. Can't we've missed an opportunity to meet up, but I'm not going to let that go by for very long, because we're going to get together. Anyway, so we used to go down there when I was a kid, and Dad would hang out in the mill, and then they had a cabin where they would play bluegrass music, and there was a guy that taught people how to make baskets and weaving and all kinds of different things. They had a sorghum where they were making sorghum, and then they
Right.
had a blacksmith shop. And I avoided everything in there. A little bit of the mill I kind of liked, but
Right.
uh, I avoided everything in that whole area except for the blacksmith shop. I couldn't get away from the blacksmith shop. And the guy who was the blacksmith there, now follow me here. The guy's name was Festus.
Festus.
That was his
Okay.
God-given name, was Festus. And
All right.
Festus was a beard and a piece of shoe leather with a hat. He was just this everything you would picture of an 1800s blacksmith. Festus was that. And Festus had a cigar that he never lit.
You
and
just
he'd
chewed
put it
on
in
it.
his mouth and just kind of gnaw on it throughout the day, and blacksmith and go the whole day. And I was just enamored with that. And he actually drove an exact replica of the General Lee
Oh, that's
every day.
cool.
That was his everyday driver. It was amazing. But anyway, at some point in time, my dad would want to spend hours there. My mom and my sister would want to go look at the guy making baskets and all that kind of stuff. And I'm not sure about my brother. I think he was more interested in the food in the area. But anyway, it got to the point. Now I'm 5, 6 years old, and I'm fascinated with Festus and the blacksmithing. And
Right.
Festus had a stump sitting right inside the little cabin that was the blacksmith shop. And the
Right.
cabin wasn't but like 10 by 10. It was this little tiny little cabin. So he had this little stump, and he asked my mom and dad if it was okay, and I asked if it was okay if I could just sit there on the stump. And he said, I won't let him go anywhere. He's not going anywhere. I said, trust me, I'm not going anywhere. I'm not going anywhere.
Right.
And I would sit imagine this, at a national park, taking your 5 or your 6 year old and leaving them
Not
alone for
today.
hours.
Not
No.
today.
And I would sit on that stump for hours, hours just watching him blacksmith. And I always thought to myself, uh, I on occasion do have some good stories. So I would sit on that stump for hours, and I was always fascinated with it, but I never really got the opportunity to do it. Life happens, and I went off to college and started having kids and responsibilities and this and that and the other thing. And I got a little bit older. We got back here on the farm, back on our home farm where I grew up. My kids are now seventh generation to grow up on the farm,
Right.
and I just thought, here's an opportunity. And I was at our local antique machinery show with my tractor, and there's a blacksmith shop there. And so I stopped into the blacksmith shop, and one of the guys that was in there, I wanted to see exactly what he was doing, and I couldn't quite see where I was at. I said, hey, could I come in there and see, exactly what you're doing? He said, yeah, sure, come on in. And there was a folding chair there, and I sat down in the folding chair, and I wasn't there but 5 minutes. And he kind of had he's got a gruff voice, and he's, well, you gonna swing the hammer or not? And I said, what? What?
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
I'd love to. And 5 minutes in, and I'm absolutely sold. I'm in. My brain is
Right.
all over the place at this point. The next month, I'd already gotten my forge. I mean, like full on coal forge, not Amazon, not to put those down, but
Right.
I've got a full-on coal forge. I knew on the farm there was an anvil somewhere on the farm that was great grandpa's, we thought. So I went and found it, molded it to a bunch of wood, and okay, well, I've got an anvil. I bought a $7 hammer. I was forging, and the more
Right.
and more I did it, the more and more I could. I just like I have to do this. And finally, we had one of our hog buildings that wasn't being used. And I looked at my mom and wife. And I said, there's just buildings not being used. I'm really enjoying this blacksmithing thing. And I said, if it's all right, I'll just convert that building into a blacksmith shop. And months of clearing out stuff that had been sitting for 30 years and digging out groundhog holes that had piled up and stuff like that.
Right.
I have a full-on blacksmith shop, and then just took off from there. One Sunday afternoon, I was, I'd been watching these guys on the internet on YouTube doing the blacksmithing thing, and I thought, you know what? I really, I really would like to share my uh, my experience, my journey in getting into
Right.
blacksmithing. Not that I have knowledge about it. I just want to share my journey in it. And
Right.
YouTube seemed to be a thing I could do. Well, that was in late February of 2020. Guess what happened in late February into March of 2020?
Yeah. COVID.
Yeah. So of all the times to get into it, when a billion other channels got into YouTube and
Right.
everybody started blacksmithing because they were all cooped up, and I thought, oh gosh, and this is going to be a struggle. And so along the line, it kind of faded a little bit, and I stuck with it, and I started increasing tools and going to conferences and doing the best I could to learn. And I just got to the point where I loved it, absolutely loved doing it. So along the line, here we are, 3 years later.
Ain't that cool? You know,
Oh gosh.
that is in 2020. It was the fall of 2020. See, 2020, I tried to. I bought some Amazon seeds because in 2019 we didn't we didn't move. We moved here in 2018. We just had Kira in January of 2018. We moved over here in June. She found out she was pregnant with Malachi. Then Malachi was born. Was her water broke at 16 weeks, and then he was born at 27 weeks.
Oh, wow.
So yeah. And then we spent 5 months in the NICU, and that was in 2019. So we came home, and I didn't get to grow a garden in 2019. So 2020 happens, and I'm like, all right, well, I always grow a garden anyhow. So I go out here and I'm starting to look around. I'd been wanting to grow some giant pumpkins because Dad had grew some back in like 2017 or something. And so anyhow, I bought some seeds off there. And while I was growing them, I was doing some videos on Facebook, like everyday updates or whatever, right? And then I was like, man, there's not very many giant growing channels because I was trying to consume giant growing stuff, and there was only 3 channels. There was Mark Clements at Keep It a Secret at Home and Gardening. There was Chad New at Colorado Giants, and there was Jacob Morencer with Growing Giants, and that was all. That was really all you had. There was a couple here and there, little ones. There, didn't really put out a whole lot of content, and so I was like, by the end of the year, I was like, I think I want to do YouTube. I was like, so I trust me, I get the whole 2020 YouTube, and then struggling because literally when I said I was going to do YouTube, about 15 other ones started doing YouTube for giant growing too. And so now I'm stuck trying to make this pivot from not pivot, but kind of come a little bit more center with things, right? Because I am a homesteading channel, but it started with a bunch of giant growers. You know what I mean? So now I've got to kind of split my time with the giant growers and the homesteading stuff, and making that pivot is difficult because you're known for one thing, and though you can do another, people don't really know you for that. And so I'm continuously trying to find more people to interview that are in the homesteading community versus the giant growing community, so I can start to make that pivot, So you're right. It is an uphill battle because a lot of people did start making YouTube and stuff, but it seems like you're doing pretty well. I mean,
the Lord's blessing us, man. We say, we have the saying here on Barr Run Forge is we're stupid blessed, blessed beyond
and
comfort. I think my earbuds just died.
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, I got one. Is this one still okay?
Yeah, that one works. That one's working.
Okay.
Yep.
I don't know what happened. Let me throw that back on the charger real quick so that the other one doesn't fall apart.
But yeah, I mean, you're right. We all are really blessed, and I was kind of discouraged after my first season because I started in March. No. I started in April of 2021. It was right after I had COVID. The first thing I did was got out there and built my greenhouse, right?
Okay.
And that was my first set of videos that I'd done. Anyhow, at the end of and I'm thinking, oh, I'm going to be growing these giants. These things are going to be big, and they were. Thousands. Several of them was 1,000 pounds.
Wow.
And I was like, everybody's going to want to watch. That is not so. That is not the case. I had by the end of the season, I had 60 people, right? And I'm like, well, this is a rain on my parade,
Yep.
And but God really does bless it. He really does look at he looks at the effort, and there in the Bible, it talks about, and everybody wants to say it, but I don't think a lot of people understand it. They always say, well, God, the Bible says that God will give you the desires of your heart, and I always have to tell people, that's true. But first, your desires have to line up with his purpose for you. And if it doesn't, then he's not going to give you that desire.
Right. If my desires are his desires, he'll give me the desires of my heart.
Exactly. Yeah. And so, when I didn't give up and I kept on pushing it, all right, man, let's see. Yes, later, GT. But that is that is the case, and I've seen the growth. I stayed the course, and sometimes it's kind of like, man, is it ever just gonna take off?
Sure.
But then I got to look at it again, and it's like, well, my predecessors that were before me, growing giants, took them 10 years, some of them, to get 1,000 subscribers.
Right.
Here I am, less than 2 years in. Well, now 2 years in, and have over the 1,000, and have already monetized it. And so that's just kind of speaking to what God does, right, and how God can use it. And I've been blessed enough to start the Skill to Heal program for veterans to grow and stuff, and
that's awesome.
It's just it's been a lot of fun. One more thing that you had mentioned though is at the beginning of that you were talking about these trades and losing these trades, right, and and stuff, and I was going to say there's not enough push in school, because even when I was going to school, it was, well, you either go to college and get a diploma or you won't have a job.
Or you're a ditch digger. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Or here in West Virginia, it's pushed. You either go into the military, you go into coal mines. Those are your two options.
Yep.
And so when you're looked at that, and then they take away the trade schools in high school. They literally had them, and by the time I got there, they were gone. They had auto body. That was the only thing left, right? And everybody spent all their time in auto body only because, well, I don't want to go to class. You know what I mean?
Right.
So they didn't really go there to learn anything. They just went there because they didn't want to go to class. And so, the welding was gone, and farming and stuff like that was gone. All kinds of different things that would have been useful were gone. And now we're starting to see an implement of those things coming back. Even in the, some of it's in the schools, but a lot of it is us having to learn it on our own, and saying, I want to learn this. It's a valuable skill.
Yeah. I mean, look right now, we were trying to get masonry work and drywall work done at the church. And of course, I've known most of the guys in our area for decades as to who does those things. And I got to thinking, all those guys are my age.
Right.
And all their workers are my age. And I'm thinking, well, where are the guys to replace them? Because we're starting to wear out. There's a certain point in time where we're just not going to do those things anymore because our bodies won't permit us to do it.
Right.
But it's really interesting because I noticed that Harbor Freight just had an advertisement out, or they sent an email out talking about they have is it 475? I don't know. It was almost $1 million, I think, when it was all said and done, that they're trying to put out in scholarship for trade schools.
That'd be great.
Mike Rowe, the Mike Rowe Foundation.
Yeah, that guy's pretty cool.
$1.2 million in surplus of scholarships.
That's nice
for trade schools.
That's
it's nice, but what he said on an interview one time was, I can't give it away. They're not applying.
Nobody wants it.
Nobody's applying for it.
That's crazy. We see,
and it's a goofball idea, because if I I've got a nephew, and I said, look, dude, if you went right now and you did your plumber, say, apprenticeship, you're the plumber within just a few years. You make the call as to what you charge walking out the door.
Right.
And you talk about, or you can be hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt, and as a general rule, not working in the field that you got your degree in.
Exactly.
And I'm all for education. Trust, like I said, I've got degrees.
Right.
But it's not the end all be all. It's not the answer for everything.
Exactly. There's nothing wrong with having degrees.
Absolutely not.
But what there is a problem with is when you've told these kids you can't be anything or get anything or have anything in life without these degrees.
Right.
And then they go to school because they've been pushed and primed to believe that lie.
Yep.
Right. And then when you tell them, hey, you can be a plumber or electrician or a welder or a this or a that, they're like, one or two things happen. Either they don't make enough money because they don't know how much those people make.
Right.
Plumbers, welders, electricians, they make a lot of money, but they don't know that they make a lot of money, or they're so so much tech in their brain that they're just like, well, I don't want to do that. I want to sit behind a desk and play with a computer all day and do codes and all this, that, and that. And while that is needed,
sure,
we can't have the entire populace sitting here on a computer trying to, because the next thing you know, we're going to have Skynet and these little Terminators are going to be coming around. I'm just picking, but
no. Consider what the scripture had to say about that too. Is see, we are all parts of one body,
right,
and all doing their part. There are many parts. So as I've said before, this hand is kind of screwed up. You can see that's kind of crinkled up. That means it's not working exactly the way it should be. But if all of us were hands, we'd never get anywhere.
That's right.
Because there's no feet.
Right.
And if all of us were noses, we'd smell a lot, but we'd never taste or see anything.
Right.
And this is the crazy part. The nose has parts in it that are essential, and one of those parts is nose hairs.
Right.
Nose hairs filter what goes in.
Right.
And it's the dirty job, but what a blessing to have people who will filter out what goes in, who have the job and take on the dirty jobs to make it all better.
Right, absolutely.
Otherwise the body's sick.
Right, exactly. And there's nothing wrong with with being a plumber. If I would have known at that age, if somebody would have set me down 16, 17 years old and said, Ryan, you don't have to go in the military and you don't have to go coal mining. You've got A, B, C, and D options that you can do. You know what I mean?
Right.
I mean, I think it would have been different. Sure. I think it would have been a lot different, because I think I'd have been like, well, I don't have to be a knucklehead. I can go learn this trade. When I get done with high school, I can have a job and I can start making money, because that was my main focus when I was a teenager. I wanted away from the house and I wanted to be on my own, because from the time I was, 7 years old, I thought I was an adult, right? I just, because it took a long time for me to have siblings. Well, I'll take it back. I had 3 older siblings, but they were much older than me. Like, I think 10 years older than me was the youngest one, closest to me.
Yeah.
And then me, and then there was a big gap between me and my younger brothers. So it was just kind of me. And I hung around all the grown-ups, because there was nobody to, else.
Right.
There was no cousins. I was the oldest. I was the oldest cousin too, kind of deal, right? Except for my older 3, which they were from my dad's first marriage. So I mean, but as far as my mom's side, I was the firstborn grandson. I was the first, of everything. So there was nobody my age, and so it was always around all the grown-ups. And whenever I was around all the grown-ups, I thought I was a grown-up. So by the time I got to be a teenager, I was very opinionated. I thought I knew it all, right? Not realizing how stupid I was. And Dad said, from the time you were 7, you wanted to leave and be a grown-up. Mm-hmm. He said, but when you got to 30, you wanted to be a kid again. I said, I regret it. I wish I would have just been a kid and stayed a kid for as long as I can. But yeah, I mean, I think it would, like I said, I think it would have been different. And I think that we are really doing an injustice to our children when we're not telling them, hey, look, there's nothing wrong with not making $200,000 a year. Of course, I know there's some plumbers that make a lot of like make that much money, Sure. It just depends on where you're at. But we shouldn't. The object of I was talking to a guy today. And he said,
by the way, where to begin Homestead is dead on. You got it right. You're perfect with that. That's a great answer.
Right. Yeah. And my husband is a self-taught welder, but didn't get into it until he was 35. Money is good, but it's all from the Lord. Absolutely. Blessing us for living without in the beginning. Right. Taught us a lot, and we are thankful. That's right. Absolutely.
Right on.
And to that, right. I was talking to this guy today, and he said, man, I'm getting ready to leave my job because, I'm worth the job that I'm doing. Because I had to tell him, I'm like, look, in my experience, you're telling me you make $25 an hour. That to me seems like a lot, because I know guys in the coal mines that make that much money, right?
Right.
Of course, I know guys in the coal mines that make $60 and $70 an hour too.
Right.
But $25 an hour here is in West Virginia is nothing to, turn
Right.
your nose up at.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, you're going to have to put me in you're going to put this in perspective for me, because you're losing me in translation here, because 25 sounds like you got a good job and you're wanting more. So he starts laying it out for me, what he does, everything, and what the bare minimum in a different company would be at
Sure.
$60, $65, $70 an hour. Yeah. And his girlfriend had just got a job doing similar for $90 an hour. And I'm sitting there going, okay, that is
right.
Boom, like
Right.
okay, yeah. And I was like, so, I start talking to him and stuff, and I said, well, I had mentioned something about the money, and he said, well, you're right. I don't want to get in a spot where the job. What I said was, if you work, or what I heard for a long time is, if you work a job that you love, you never worked a day in your life, right?
Right. Yeah.
And he said, well, you got a good point there. He said, I don't want the money to be the focal point to where I end up in a job that I hate. And I said, well, at least you're at that point, but I think that's what we do to our kids. We schools and even us sometimes have primed them to believe, you're measured of success, instead of giving them godly measurements, right? Instead of saying you're measured, your worth is in God, right, and in Christ. Instead of telling them that, we give them this false, kind of sense of, you're measured, your worth is measured by your success and how successful you are. And success is measured by how big your house is, how expensive your car is, how much money you bring home, et cetera, et cetera. And we push them in that direction, right? Instead of saying, if you were, we'll go back to the plumber again. If you're the plumber and an old lady calls you and says, hey, I'm on assisted living or whatever, and I'm not making much money, could you still come out here and help me? And your rates are usually $100 an hour, and you go out there and fix it for free or just for the parts. You see what I'm saying? That's the type of people we should be raising, right? And we're not doing a very good job of, some of us are not doing a very good job of it, right?
Yeah, and I'll kind of add on to that, being at the age that I am, and the part in life that I am. First and foremost, I'm a minister, a farmer, and a blacksmith. So I chose all my professions based on tons of money coming in, right?
Right, absolutely.
So everything I do is because I'm making just tons of money, and all my kids have education as well, and they all went off to college, all got their degrees, and what I've seen is, over the years, is it's not that we tell them to go get the jobs and get the education that will make them money for them.
Right.
We have a tendency to say, subconsciously we're saying, and that'll show that I was a successful parent.
There you go.
So that'll reflect on me. So if my kid's the ditch digger, then I have to go to that party or that event and go, yeah, my kid's digging 40 feet of ditch a day.
Right.
That's my
Well, we live vicariously through them sometimes, I think.
Sure.
And that's another fault that we have, or we want them to have better than we have.
Right.
We don't want them to have the busted up hands, having trigger finger or arthritis or whatever. Right. We want them to have that easy road. But at the same time, I always tell, this a lot. When I was a kid, my dad, all my friends at school were talking about they were getting these allowances. I'm like, allowance? What's an allowance?
What's that?
Yeah, we get money for doing our chores. You get money for taking your laundry to the laundry room and loading the dishwasher and washing dishes and all them, and cleaning your room. You get money for that? Oh,
yeah.
I'm going home, buddy. I'm asking. So I go to the house, and there's Dad standing at the sink, and he's looking out the window, and I said, Dad. I mean, just as soon as I got in the door, Dad, can I have an allowance? He stood there for a minute, washed his hands, and he looks over. A what? an allowance. Can I have an allowance? All my friends are getting allowances for cleaning the room and And he's like, get outside for a second. I'm like, oh man, because anytime he said go out to the garage,
Yeah.
you were getting whooped. And I'm
Yeah.
thinking, man, they done got me in trouble, and I didn't understand, And money for helping where you live. Yeah,
Right. Yeah.
yeah. And
Yeah.
but anyways, I'm like, yeah, yeah. So go out, and he goes out the outside garage door. I'm like, okay, well, I'm not getting whooped because he didn't go.
Right.
He didn't stay in the garage. He went out. So I'll go out and follow him around. He goes to the side of the house and he opens up the bottom of it and he says, "There's a lawnmower. There's a weed eater. There's a lawnmower gas. There's a weed eater gas. I'll provide all the gas, but you can walk up and down this holler and cut every yard you can find. As far as an allowance, I put food on the table, clothes on your back, shoes on your feet, a place to take a shower. You got a daggone the not the internet, but the because it wasn't internet, whether it was
Cable TV.
Yeah. You got TV and you got the games. My brother and him like game stuff, Sega and all that. He was like, excuse me, but if that ain't enough allowance, then you can walk up and down this holler.
Yeah.
And get you some more money. But as far as allowance, I give it to you every day. You're not getting nothing else.
Yeah.
And I took that to heart,
Yeah.
And I went every day walking up and down that holler, cutting grass,
Yeah.
And when all my friends at the pool, I would walk from my house to the pool. It was 2 miles out of the holler and then 2.5 miles to the pool. And I walked it every day there and every day back. Except for sometimes I got a ride here or there, right?
Right. Right.
But I had money and I could go to Dairy Queen when all my friends couldn't. And they'll give me some money. What'd you do?
Right.
I had to cut 3 yards for this, man.
Right.
It's got to last me all week.
Sure.
But that taught me responsibility. And it taught me, how to do things. And then I took it further and started picking all the vegetables that him and my mama wouldn't pick out of the garden. I'd pick all those vegetables and I'd walk up and down the holler and sell those, and so, that's the kind of things that we should instill in our children today. And I think because, like I said, because we live vicariously and we just, for whatever we want better for them, I think we give them the easy road, sometimes. And I think it ain't until we look back that we realize maybe I should have done it differently, and I know my dad, since we were older now, him and mom both have been like, yeah, we should have done this or that differently. Right.
Sure.
And they try to give that grandparent advice now, right. Where it's like, hey, I did that wrong. Now you do it this way. Right. Sure. And it's like, now hang on a minute. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. You always told me that, you know what I mean? So that, so don't be going getting soft on me now just because you're getting old. Right.
Hey, that's a grandparent thing.
Right. Right. But I think some of it you do have to listen to, because I think it's wisdom on their part. They've done lived that part and they're trying to help you to, not have to come back and say, hey, I should have done it differently. Right. But yeah, I mean, this is a really different time that we're living in. We got these old things coming back and we've got this new tech pushing forward every day. And so, and you're kind of split on these kinds of things, right? You got a lot of people that are like, hey, let's go back to the simple ways of living. I would, the other day I gave some seeds away yesterday to a gentleman that stopped here. I loaded him up full of seeds and he was like, man, I'll pay you for it. And I said, nope, I don't want no money. You sure? I was like, yeah. I was like, because there might be a day that you got something I need. He's like, I like Dylan like that. I said, me too.
Barter system is not dead.
Absolutely.
I love the barter system.
Me too. And, because, it keeps going like it is. That's all there's going to be.
Yeah.
So, we need those skills, those people skills,
right.
Those are lost too. There's, the people skills. And
what you see has diminished as a result of that is, again, when I was a kid 480 years ago, we used to plant and harvest everybody else's crops together.
Right.
Barn raisings, things like that. And so if say for instance you had the skill to be able to do this thing that I don't have, we helped each other.
Right.
And what those skills also do is promote a sense of community. And we've gotten to the point now where we just, well, I make enough money to pay a guy to do that. And then we've also gotten to the point where we'll do something for somebody and then say, how much do I owe you?
Right.
And that's a disgusting phrase, to be quite honest with you.
It is.
How much do I owe you? Well, if I was doing it to get paid for it, I would have walked up to you and says, now I'll do this thing for this amount of money.
Right.
You know, I've always felt insulted with the how much do I owe you thing, because
Right.
I didn't do this because the problem is people feel like they are now beholden to you. I don't want to owe you for anything, so I'll just pay you and then we'll be square.
Right. Right.
And that's not what community does. The
No.
community doesn't do that. And the people with those personal skills promoted the community as well, which is why I think the homesteading community has thrived the way it does, because of people will just say, well, here's these seeds, I've got extra, and who
Right.
knows how you could help somebody, or I may need your help one day.
Right.
And as a result of that, we promote the community.
Right.
It's really interesting here. You know, we started our channel as a strictly, I won't say strictly blacksmithing, but we started as blacksmithing and also to share the word of God. You know, some of our videos, we'll have a biblical message to tie what we've made in together. And then we got to thinking, okay, well, um, we live on a farm we've been at for 120 years, and
You're the real
and
Duttons.
oh, buddy, and then there's actually only a period of 9 years between the Virginia Military Survey and today. There was only a period of 9 years where our family didn't own this farm.
That's crazy.
So we're closer to the 225-year period of being on the farm.
That's awesome.
So I guess technically we'd be considered homesteaders. We're still trying.
Right.
We're still trying to homestead.
Right.
Uh, but I think about these things where, our family has been here on the farm through, the War of 1812, the Civil War, the turn of the 1900s, World War One, World War Two, the Great Depression, Korea, Vietnam, the space flight,
Right.
the space race. My family's been on this farm before we were flying.
Right. That's awesome.
And it's such an amazing thing to me, and part of the reason why I think about, okay, what do we do with that? And if we've got a platform we want to share, okay, I think about it as just every day what we do. And for others, it would be, okay, these folks have been at it for decades and literally centuries.
Right.
What can we share? What can we share along that line? And we're not just a blacksmith. We're not just blacksmiths. I'm a preacher. I'm also a farmer, and the blacksmith as well. So we
Right.
started sharing that. I've built the greenhouse here and a hen house and done the raised beds and a bunch of other stuff. And so we just share our whole farming experience. We'll do harvest. We'll do planting. We're getting ready to do our spring planting here very soon. So tomorrow I'm going to be out working on the planter, getting it ready to go, and just all kinds of fun stuff is getting ready to happen here.
We're
But
gonna be planting.
well, we've got wheat in the ground now that we'll harvest late June, early July, and then turn around and put soybeans in behind that. But we're also going to be planting corn and soybeans in April and probably early May.
Okay.
So we're getting everything ready for that. And we're just a small family farm, and that's the other part about this is kind of crazy is we are literally the smallest farm in our area, um, because we're also looking at what I'll call corporate farms around
Right.
us. It's really, really difficult to be a small family farm right now and
It is.
survive.
Yep.
Um, and we can't, at our size, we can't depend on just the farm to sustain us. We have to have something else.
Right.
It takes care of itself and a little bit, and that's about it.
Right.
Unless you've got around here, if you haven't got 750 to 1,000 acres, you don't you don't make money, you don't
Right.
make a living at it.
Right.
And so we're just basically, we're keeping the farm in the family, and we're sustaining it for the next generation, and that's about the extent of it.
And that, you know what? That's something else that really has always troubled me growing up, is the fact that there was people in my family that had land, and
Hmm.
instead of passing it on and
Yeah,
continuing to pass it on, somebody said, well, you know what? I don't want this life anymore. And I don't care if anybody else down the line
yeah,
wants this life. I want my money now. You know, it's
yeah.
kind of like the J.G. Wentworth attitude. It's my money
Correct.
and I want it now. And so they
Yeah,
sell the land. And then the next generation is like, well, man, I would have gave anything to have had that,
sure.
you
Yeah,
know, and it's sad, you know, so,
yeah,
so good on you guys for keeping that going and keeping it in the family. And even though you're in a place where it's a struggle, you know, to keep it, I mean, that's great, because that is essentially what gave the corporate, you know, the big ag, the upper hand, was people saying, I don't want it anymore.
I'll take the check.
Right.
And I don't feel, I don't guilt the people who have done that. Something that's happening in our area right now is the solar farms,
Right.
solar plants, and essentially what has happened is the small family farmer is offered a massive amount of money. The guy that's my age and older,
Right.
who is tired. Their kids have gotten the educational things, and they don't want to be a part of the farm anymore.
Right.
And there's not enough wealth built up to say, okay, well, we can just do it no matter what. And somebody offers them a big check and says, you don't have to break your back anymore.
Right.
I don't, I don't blame the guys. I don't blame those folks for
I
doing
mean,
that.
I understand it, you know, but at the same time, it's just sad,
Yeah,
because eventually people like us, we're not going to own anything.
right.
We're going to be, they will reduce us down to 1 acre or less plots.
Yeah,
And that's essentially what we're going to have.
yeah.
And what can you raise on an acre? I can tell you right now, not much, because I'm
Not
trying,
much.
and it
Enough
and
to
it's a
feed yourself,
battle,
and that's about
right?
it.
And it's a battle to try to raise even that much to feed yourself.
Right,
You know, when
right,
you're looking at chickens, and chickens need X amount of room, right?
right.
And you're looking at goats, and they need X amount of room. And you got pigs, and they're X amount of room. And then you got
Yep,
a garden, and you need, you know, there's not much. Now, I mean, of course, I could give, you know, if push came to shove, I could quit growing the giants, right? And just put garden up or animals up on that part of land, right?
right.
Um, but you know, at the end of the day, I mean, I'm gonna be honest, giants make me money.
Yeah,
You know, I mean, they do. If I win, I can win as much as, you know. There's guys that win. You know, if I got a big enough one, I can win as much as $30,000. You
wow.
know, I mean, I could sell those seeds for $275 or more for the one seed,
Yeah,
right? I mean,
yeah,
there's money in it, right? But the money isn't, you know, that's not what I'm in it for. I'm in it just because I like it. It's a
right.
passion of mine. I like to play around with it, and I like the smiles that they bring on people's faces, right?
Sure.
I would rather see somebody light up when they see that in the back of the truck and go, "Is that real?" Then, I mean, that to me is worth all the money, right?
Right,
But it doesn't hurt to have the money at the end of the season, right? Because you're like, man, you know, I spent a pretty penny this year on that, and I need to
right,
recoup a little bit of it, you know.
right.
But you know, that's really what you know, for me it's about. But you're right, you know, community is everything. You know, the other day, and I'll share this with you. I haven't told anybody about this yet, and I got a little bit of footage, but I had to hide my camera when I did this. So there was a gentleman that's here in the neighborhood. Well, let's backtrack. About 3 or 4 weeks ago, I was at the post office talking to my buddy Sonny. He's the postmaster there, and I said, "Hey, do you know anywhere I can go and metal detect? Because you know I really want to metal detect this area. Some Civil War stuff happened around here. There's a lot of troop movement through here and stuff. I just want to, you know, kind of metal detect and stuff and see what I can find." I said, "I found some things in some areas around here, and I just want some extra properties to look at." I said, "No, where did I know of?" He said, "Why don't you ask the man across the road?" And I'm not going to say his name, but anyhow, he said, talk to the man up the road there. And I was like, okay. So I told him, though, I said, I don't think he's going to let me. I said, because I've tried to get on there and trap. He wouldn't even let me on there to trap. I was like, he won't even let me on there to shed hunt. I said, so I don't think I'm going to get on there. And so I didn't even, really give the notion much thought. The following week, I get a phone call from a buddy of mine. He says, hey, you want to go treasure hunting tomorrow? I said, sure. What are we treasure hunting? He said, well, you're going to have your metal detector. I said, okay. I said, well, what are we going to go hunt? He said, well, this guy that's in the community, same guy that this other fella told me to go ask about metal detecting, and I told him he probably wouldn't let me. He says, and something else that Sonny, my buddy, told me. He said, I always heard that he buried his money in his yard. Okay. And I said, everybody's always heard somebody buried money in their yard. Well, this guy comes up to me and he calls me on the phone, says, hey, we need to go metal detecting and go treasure hunting. And I said, where are we going? He tells me where we're going. And I said, I kid you not. I said, just last week I was talking to Sonny at the post office, and he said that the guy you're wanting me to come do buried all his money in the yard. He said, well, I can't say that he was lying. He said, but, and I said, you got to be kidding me. Anyhow, 11 4-foot long PVC sewer pipe filled with silver dollars from the 1800s. 11 of them. Okay. Couldn't find. He dug 9 of them up and used 9.
Yeah.
Whenever his wife had cancer.
Okay.
To help pay for all that.
Right.
That was 30 years ago. He had dug the remaining 2 up when they replaced the porch.
Okay.
And buried them back, and his wife drew a map where he buried them.
Uh-huh.
So I'm looking for 2 4-foot long sewer pipes full of 1800. Yeah. Full of 1800s coins and silver dollars. And I'm sitting there and I'm just thinking, man, if I find these, man, this old guy comes up there and says, you reckon I ought to take the auger on the back of the tractor and dig them holes you marked? I kid you not. And this other fella looks at him and says, unless you want them coins to come out of there like a fountain, I wouldn't do that,
No.
And so anyhow, we're up there and I'm looking and I get this beep, and I'm telling you what, I've been metal detecting since 2020, I think 2020 or 2021. And I've gotten pretty good at it, right? I can hear certain tones, and I'm like, we got to dig that one. And sometimes it turns out to be a pop tab or something, right? But there are certain tones that are just, I mean, when you hear them, that solid, you just know. And I get this tone, and I'm like, oh man, and it's 3.5 foot long.
Uh-huh.
And he says, that's right around where them flower beds were. And I said, oh come on. I'm just chopping at the, I'm ready to go. And other guy comes over and marks them with some pink yard paint. I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, I'm just marking these. Him and his grandson's going to dig them up. No. I'm here now. I want to see what they dig up. And so anyhow, wouldn't dig them. Would not dig them. So I marked 5 of them on the bank. 2 of them where some old fuel tanks were. 3 of them in the front where there was a well at, and 2 of them alongside the house. While I was there, 2 of them alongside the house got dug, but they were not the good ones that I found on the bank where them other ones were. And so I got ready to leave, and the old guy pulls his wallet out. Now, mind you, I don't know how true it is, but everybody says he's a millionaire.
Mm-hmm.
His mom and dad were some of the first, their family was some of the first people in Jumping Branch. His mom and dad owned everything from the feed store to the tractor to the post office, everything up until like the 70s or 80s. Okay. And then it just kind of started slowly dwindling down. He still owns the majority of the property. Just don't own the businesses with it.
Right.
And so lots of money. So he goes and he pulls his wallet out, and I have been on this guy forever to get on his property, to just walk it. Just let me walk it, you know? No. Well, he pulls his wallet out and he goes to pay me and he says, how much do I owe you? I said, not a thing.
Right.
He said, are you sure? That's awful cheap. I said, you didn't find it yet. I said, so how do I know you found anything? You'd be paying me for something I didn't even find. And he said, all right. So I get ready to leave. He says, come here. He says, you see this lot right here? I said, yeah. He said, 1942, my daddy's hotel burnt down right here. Burnt to the ground. He starts telling me about they had a piano that in 1941, they was offered $1,000 for that piano. And they wouldn't take it. They had it halfway out of the hotel, and nobody would help them pull it out.
Oh.
Yeah, burnt up there. He said all kinds of silverware, good, real silverware, burnt up, and it's in this right here. He said, you metal detect this all you want.
Huh. I
said, okay. So I'm up there metal detecting, and I found some pretty cool things, an old hawkbill knife, a plow blade, and some other stuff. And I didn't metal detect all of it yet. And he comes back, he's getting ready to go to bed, and he says, you see that house down there on the other side of the store? I said, yeah. He said, that was my grandmother's. The house, the land ain't never been touched. When she died, we locked it all up. The whole thing. Nobody's ever been back in it.
Wow.
He said, you can metal detect all around that. The dirt has never been touched. Nobody ever pushed anything. Because, see, I guess where the hotel burnt down, they pushed about a foot or so of soil over top of it.
Yeah.
He said, nobody's ever touched anything down there. He said, you have at it. And I said, you got to be kidding me. So it's a couple weeks have passed, and I've asked. I've not asked him if they found the money. I asked the guy that asked me if I'd go up there if they found it. And he says, I don't think so. And but next time I see the old fella, I'm gonna ask him, because I want a picture. Not that I would show the picture or anything. What I would do is I would hang the picture on my wall. Mm-hmm. But I want a picture with me and him and these 2 4-foot-long tubes.
Right.
Filled with silver dollars,
right?
And just take a picture of it, and maybe if I could talk him out of $1 just so I could put it in, frame it up with the picture,
Sure.
Because I ain't kidding you. I've heard that stuff all my life, and I've never met anybody that ever had done it,
right.
And I get up there and I'm talking to him, and I said, well, whatever possessed you to do that? He said, I don't know, my daddy done it.
Right.
And I thought, man, I bet if I ran a metal detector all over this, everything you own, it's hard to tell what I'd find,
Yeah.
But
when my my parents got the old farmhouse a long time ago, they started going through the attic space and cleaning out from great grandma and grandpa that we had it in there, and of course they saved Quaker Oat and Cool Whip and all those containers, everything got saved, shoe boxes, everything got saved. And they got to the point where they just backed a wagon up to the back window of the place and started throwing stuff out of the attic. And one of those shoe boxes came open, and inside were war bonds.
Oh, wow.
Stacked completely full. So great grandma was taking some of her egg money. That was her thing that she could get from the farm. She was taking her egg money, buying war bonds, and never cashed them in.
That's crazy.
So
were they any good?
Yeah, I mean, they were worth the amount of money that they paid for them.
Right.
So if she bought a $5 war bond, it was $5.
Okay.
But it was all said and done. There was a decent amount, but it was just interesting that, that was up in the attic, just shoe boxes full of that stuff, and who knows what else, But it was, that kind of idea was a very Great Depression era response. Is you can't depend on the bank, you can't depend on the government, so stash it away, find places for it, and do things like that. But yeah, definitely. So all right, I'm going to ask the question real quick.
Go ahead.
I'm going to have to go here before
too
long. I'm hearing. I know you're from West Virginia.
Yeah.
Now I went to Bible college in Grayson, Kentucky.
Okay.
So you know where Grayson is?
Is
Ashland,
it Easter? Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
right on I-64 between Moorhead and Ashland,
Right.
not too far from Huntington. And so we would hear, we watched WSAZ.
Yep.
Okay, so is that kind of the area you're in? Because I don't want to give away your
No.
location or whatever,
No.
but
No. So WSAZ, I got them to come up here and do a
okay,
story on me. Right. Brad Rice, I think is
yeah,
who. Yeah. Okay.
yeah,
Traveling West Virginia, and so really great guy. I got him to come up here and do a story. But I live in the southern east side of West Virginia, so I am closer to. I can be in Virginia in 20 minutes.
okay,
So Huntington is 2 hours away from me.
okay.
Yeah,
So what
but
would be
now
the
I do
next?
go through there when I go to weigh pumpkins in Kentucky.
Okay, so what would
Yeah,
be the next closest? Because I do know a lot of those
Beckley.
areas.
Beckley is the
Oh,
closest. Yeah,
okay. So I'm
I'm
going to
I'm
be
I'm 30 minutes from Beckley.
okay. So we're going to be in Beckley in June. We take a group. We used to go um, down in the Monongahela Forest with a group of
Right,
teenagers from our camp and go camp in the Monongahela Forest. Work our way up through Hillsboro and into back up towards Beckley to go rafting. Obviously,
right.
at Appalachian Bible College, Alpine Ministries.
Yep.
So we know a lot of that territory out through there
Okay.
quite well. And then got some good friend of mine grew up in Bluefield. So like you say, getting into Virginia in a very short period of time,
Yep. Yeah,
Bluefield.
you can throw a rock and be there.
That's right. That's
Yep.
right. So Big Walker Mountain, all that kind of fun
Yep.
stuff.
Yep. Well, I go through that tunnel when I go to Virginia, go to North Carolina. So
Yep.
there's two tunnels that you go through on the
Yep.
way
And my
down.
first ministry, my first full-time ministry was in Mount Airy, North Carolina.
Okay. Yeah. I go right
Uh,
by there every time I go to weigh a pumpkin.
sure
So,
enough.
I mean, you're very familiar with where
Yep.
with everything around me. But yeah, uh, you know, uh, yeah, if you're up here in June, you're more than welcome to come swing by and take a look at everything going on, you know. But, just real quick, back to what we were talking
Sure.
about the
Yeah.
community, though. When he pulled that wallet out to pay me, he fully expected me to tell him a price. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
And when I told him no, I got back home, I was telling my wife about it. And he was like, now he probably trusts you. Now he knows that you're not about the money, that you don't care nothing about the money. And and that's why he lets you metal detect. That's why he
Right.
told you to come back anytime you wanted,
Right.
and she said, you'll probably, eventually be able to go and shed hunt there,
Right.
because that's ultimately what I want. I just want to shed hunt because he's got these massive fields full of hay. And I even told him, I said, listen, you got that sawmill? I said, there's lumber that I need. I'll pay you for the lumber, but I'll also come help you cut it,
Right.
because I mean, the gas to run the mill ain't free.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So I told him, hey, I'll pay you to come help me cut it. If you need hay cut, I buy hay. I'll come help you cut the hay
Right.
and put it all up and then buy the hay off of you. You know what I mean?
Right.
But you're right. The community's gone. It's
Yeah.
completely, what they knew, what the old guy knows, what my grandparents and great grandparents knew. That community is completely gone. My
Right.
great grandmother saved it just like yours, saved every Quaker Oats can, every daggone whipped cream, the country crock butter bowls,
Right.
everything. You didn't know if you were opening up butter or green beans.
Right.
I
Right.
mean, you know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah.
My brother, when he got back from Iraq, my mom was staying with my grandmother. She'd gotten Alzheimer's. Was my great grandmother, and my mom was staying with her. My brother come back from Iraq. He didn't have a place yet, so he was staying with her and my grandmother, because my great grandmother had this humongous 5-bedroom house, or it was actually 6-bedroom house. It was massive, way too big for her. And anyways, my brother was staying with him, and she took his spit bottles because he was chewing, and she took his spit bottles and dumped them out and rinsed them out and went to the refrigerator, filled them up with water, put the lid back on them, and set them in the fridge. And everybody said, no more water from grandma's,
Right.
because she's going and getting the dip bottles and dumping them and then
Uh-huh.
filling them back up, But that was their minds. Every egg carton, tons
Right.
of egg. I mean, stacks of
Sure.
egg cartons.
Absolutely.
And I think, I mean, some of that wore off on me because unlike my little brothers, I was around long enough with them. I spent a lot of time with them,
Yeah.
that some of that rubbed off on me, so now, my mindset is, my wife hates it, but I'll come in here, I'll get done with the ice cream container, the cardboard ice cream containers, or even the plastic ones, and rinse them out, clean them up, put them up. What are you doing with that? Would you rather me buy a pot that's going to break and bust in one use, or
Right.
wash that ice cream tote out or whatever, plant my plants in it, let them grow, and then I can just tear it up, put it in the ground with it. It'll decompose with it,
Yeah.
and I'm good to go.
Sure.
And I ain't paid
Yeah.
$1 or whatever it is for the thing, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, some of that rubbed off, and I
Sure.
think it's a good thing.
Yeah.
But man,
My hope is that that's cyclical, that it comes back,
right,
and it's kind of up to us to ingrain that into children and grandchildren at this point. Um, so
right. I hope it does. There's that saying that weak men make strong men, and strong men make weak men. Right? It's
mm,
something to that of that nature. I
sure.
can't remember exactly how it goes,
Yeah.
but or strong men make good times, and weak men make for bad times, and strong men make for good times. It's just kind of like
Yeah.
that, and I think that's what we see. They used to call my great grandparents the greatest generation or something, right? Fought World War II and done all those things. My grandma worked in an airplane factory and
Right.
and all kinds of stuff. And my grandfather was a paratrooper and the Second Ranger Battalion stuff. And there was a lot of rich history there. And then you kind of see the progression, right? Like
Hmm.
their children was just a little bit less than what they were, and their children was a little bit less than they were, and eventually you roll around till you got the weak men and the hard times again, right? And I hope
But
that doesn't happen.
consider this though. Um, the their parents, they those kids, those greatest generation people came out of the Roaring Twenties.
That's true. Yep.
So when things were beyond great,
Right. Right.
things were really, really good. And
Yep.
then the Great Depression hit.
Yep.
So, they came out of a really prosperous time
They did.
in our history following World War One. It came out of a really prosperous time, and they were thrust into a position where the mettle of men was tested.
Right.
And so, what made them the greatest generation was the response to the situation they were put in. It wasn't just that they were born that way, because they were
Right.
born into a pretty good situation as a
Right.
general rule. So that's my take on that. Is I and my grandpa was one of my heroes. South
Right.
Pacific Marine. He was one of my heroes. He was a bad dude. He was a
Yep.
great guy, but he was tough. He was he
Mine
was a
too. Mine too. That was the
uh,
whole reason why I went in the army and jumped out of
yeah,
planes and done all the stuff that he
yeah.
done was because of
But
him.
I don't ever refer to them as the greatest generation. I've done enough sociological studies that I understand. I call them the GI generation.
Right.
They were in that first of that crew, because I don't know who the greatest generation is.
It would be
And,
it would be hard to say. I mean, was it
yeah,
was it the ones that fought Revolutionary War? Was it the ones that battled the frontier,
right,
and braved from the East Coast to the West Coast? Who would be the greatest generation?
right,
Um, it would be such a mixed bag
yeah,
of stuff. You're right. You're right.
yeah.
That is something to really be said. But it's man, I just love history and everything
It's
to
good
do
stuff.
with yeah. There's a thing out here, Indian Mills, and it's got a section of where soldiers are buried at from the Revolutionary War all the way up until the Civil War. Yeah, I
Okay,
think I think the Civil War is the cutoff. But I mean, you've got the Indian Wars buried there. You've got the War of 1812 buried there. I mean, just
yeah,
all those all those different ones, and it's just like, man, this is really cool, and it really, when you go and you look at that, you try to put yourself back in that time, back in that time frame, like what was that guy doing, like what was his job? What did it look like? What did it smell like? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And you try to imagine that.
Mm-hmm.
It would be so cool if we could just jump in Doc Brown's time machine, right? And
Right,
go back and just kind of watch from afar, right? And see how it was. But yeah, I mean, I think history's great, and running your genealogy and knowing all that and stuff is fun. And it's just such rich history here in America that we don't appreciate. We don't teach it anymore either, sadly. So, but you said you got to go. I don't want to hold you up.
Yeah, unfortunately, man, I got
No,
tons to do.
I appreciate the time you gave me. I really do. We'll have to do this again, scheduled though.
Yes.
Because I'd love to have you back on. There's a lot that we could cover and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you did really good tonight, and I'm very thankful for it, man. Really, really thankful.
Well, if you get an opportunity, go over our about page, and even on the website is my contact info. It's got my personal cell phone on it. I really don't care what everybody says. Let her rip. Call me, text me, whatever.
Okay,
and,
awesome.
If you need to get a hold of me, let me know. And I really appreciate you, brother. And it was good talking with you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for coming on and covering for me. I can't thank you enough. If there's anything you need from me, just let me know. I will go on there tonight and I'll get your stuff, and then I'll give you a quick text or whatever, so you got my number and stuff.
Great.
All right. But so guys, that's all we got for tonight. So next week we have Aero Mixer. Aero Mixer's coming on. Hey, this is important too. So the Aero Mixer is the thing I use to mix my fertilizer and my compost teas. It's like $279. He's the Aero Mixer guy, Elijah, said he would give one away next week on the show, at the end of the show, if they could answer some questions about tonight's live stream and next week's live stream. Okay.
Wow.
It's going to be just a few questions from both live streams, and he'd give them a $279 Aero Mixer, So, you might be able to win. You just got to watch next week. You're right. But it's in all truth, it is a really nice thing to use for using, mixing fertilizer. I'm sure you got big tanks that have to be mixed and stuff for your big farming, or for
we got a pretty good pile of, we'll call it compost.
Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, this thing could really, really, really brew it up. You know what I mean? If you really want to mix it or whatever, I've used it in 275 gallon totes. It does really good. But anyhow, I mean, anybody that would want to watch next week, you're more than welcome to. Just got to answer questions from this week and next week, and you could possibly win that. And then so that'll be next week on the 11th, I think. Yeah. And then on the 18th, we have Mark Morales coming on from the GPC. We're going to talk about giant pumpkins and his passion for taking pictures of giant pumpkins and stuff like that. Then on the 25th of April, Extreme Gardening. I'm wearing their hat. So Extreme will be on to talk to us about Azos, Mycos, and all those good things. So guys, we got a lot of stuff going on. If you want to be on the show, go on ahead and email me, babydrill2119@yahoo.com, and in the subject title, put in live stream, and we'll get you a date set up, because I think I've only got one for May set up right now. I think it's May 25th, and Cattywampus Acres is going to be back on that day. So I'm kind of freed up in May, and I'm all freed up in June, and I'd like to get those filled as soon as possible. So anyhow, guys, we appreciate you watching, and we're going to see y'all's next time right here in the hollers and hills of West Virginia. If you want to stay on, we'll finish up with you at the end of this, as soon as I end this.
Take care, guys. God bless y'all.